Hey everybody, Brian Zane here with my NXT review for June 15th, 2021. We are experiencing the fallout from TakeOver in Your House on Sunday as we barrel toward the Great American Bash in 3 weeks on the USA Network. The show opens up with GM Willie Regal making his way to the ring. Of course, Sunday's show ended on a cliffhanger when he said it's time for a change after all the bedlam he's been witnessing in the last several weeks. And, that show ended with him having a single tear down his cheek. But this one is all full-on crying basically here. And I'm not trying to mock it because it's a very emotional, passionate speech he has here talking about all the growth and change and evolution that NXT's gone through since he and Triple H took it over a decade ago and what they wanted it to be and how it's grown and where they've gone and everything and the stars they've made. It felt like a genuine retirement speech or farewell speech. It was very much, had me a little verklempt watching it, honestly. And so anyway, before he makes something, he's about to say something, he's going to do something. Before he says it though, Karrion Kross and Scarlett interrupt, and Kross is loving this. He mocks Regal for crying, and then he wants Regal to say out loud that he is leaving and never coming back. Suddenly, Samoa Joe's music plays, and the man himself makes his way to the ring. Something that was reported a couple of days ago, so it wasn't exactly a huge surprise, but it was reported a couple days ago that Joe was re-signed with the company just exclusively through NXT. And I'm still in disbelief that he was released from the company a few months ago. That was, I think, one of the biggest whiffs of the entire mass release thing they had done all year. So anyway, Joe gets to the ring. Regal offers him the GM job on the spot, but Joe says absolutely not. But he elaborates saying, Regal has left such a tall shadow and big shoes to fill. And even though when he was a competitor there, they may not have always got along, but he always respected Regal. So he's offering, his counter offer to Regal is he wants to be basically an enforcer to help keep the bedlam at bay. So Regal thinks about it and he tells Joe that if he takes this job, he can no longer be an active competitor and he's not allowed to put his hands on anyone unless he's provoked. And then with that, Joe accepts it. He stares down Karrion Kross, who then kind of backs away and leaves the ring as people chant, "Joe's gonna kill you," and the "Nah Nah Hey Hey Goodbye" song. And that's the end of that. But it's great to see Samoa Joe back. What an opener here. And even though Samoa Joe returning was something we all kind of saw coming from the news we saw over the weekend, still very satisfying to see this take shape here. It is on one level disappointing that, he's not a competitor anymore, but I think this is probably a great role for him. We don't really know how close he is or how far away he is from being cleared to compete or what his status is in that regard. Obviously, he's older and banged up. It's not 2007 anymore, so you won't be getting that Samoa Joe, but you're going to get Samoa Joe in a role that I think he does very well. He looks very intimidating in a suit. I think one of the reasons that shocked me about his release earlier this year was here's a guy who is so good at every role he's given in WWE. He's a great wrestler, he's a great announcer, and he's kind of one of those guys who seems very versatile. So the fact he was let go in the first place is mind-boggling. So I think it's a good move that he's back at NXT here and he's given this chance to do something a bit more, a little bit less physical, and we'll talk about that as the show goes on, a little bit less physical. But I think it's great to see Samoa Joe here. I think the enforcer role is something that would fit him very well, but of course time will tell. We hear from Gibson and Drake, GYV, in regards to their Tornado tag match later on with Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher. They say how they're from working class towns in England, so they're used to verbal and physical abuse, but they promise they're going to kick the heads off their opponents in that Tornado tag. And then our next match, our first match I should say, is Imperium versus Breezango. Kind of a grudge match here because Eichner and Bartel are under orders from Walter to get their vengeance against Breeze and Fandango after the tag team title change we saw earlier this year. I love there's one point early in the match where Imperium just flat out a Tyler Breeze dive to the outside. Tyler just eats it, and then immediately Fandango dives onto the two of them, so he gets them to move off. Fandango takes a lot of heat in this matchup here. Hot tag to Breeze, and within 15, 20 seconds, not a very long hot tag, but he just rolls up Eichner to win the match. But then right afterward, Imperium beat him down, hit him with the European bomb, and they drape the Imperium flag over his prone body, and they do the pose. Yeah, that'll show him you were told to beat them in a match, and you couldn't do it. So, yay, 50-50 booking, I guess, strikes again. It's Bedlam time. We cut to backstage and see Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly once again scrapping, and they're pulled apart by security. And William Regal, I had to play this back 5 times because because there was so much shouting going on. It was like really hard to discern what was going on here. So Regal says that in 3 weeks he's going to have them wrestle a straight up one-on-one match at the Great American Bash, and then next week they're going to be in individual singles matches, and he wants them each to pick their own opponents. Cole breaks out of it from the security and starts beating up O'Reilly again. Samoa Joe gets involved. Cole puts his hands on Joe, and it's the transformation moment. Joe takes off his jacket and locks in the coquina clutch to Cole and knocks him out within seconds. And that's that. Already putting Joe to pretty good use here as the enforcer of NXT. And then we see Santos Escobar backstage talking about the six-man tag loss to Bronson Reed and MSK on Sunday, and how embarrassed he was that he was squished once again. Hearing him say squished, it was just like, it's just a funny word to hear in wrestling, I think. So anyway, he was squished and plowed through the barricade on Sunday, and how he's going to pick him up once again like he did on Sunday, and when it's one-on-one, he's going to beat him and become the new North American champion. Up next, Kushida defends the Cruiserweight Championship in an open challenge against newcomer Trey Baxter, the former Blake Christian of GCW and various independents. Very similar format to a few weeks ago when Kushida fought Carmelo Hayes, the former Christian Casanova, where it's like, hey, here's this new signee, here's his new name, here's a little promo package about that guy to get you to know him, and here's the match. And so I think it's kind of a cool format, and it's a great, easy way to introduce these new talents and show what they can do in this in this style here. There's some flippy action at the beginning, and then at one point there's this part that kind of falls off the rails. They're trying to get in position, but they do recover nicely after that. We see Kyle O'Reilly make his way to the ringside area or on stage just before commercial break. The match is pretty good here once it gets past that awkward moment in the first point of the match. Trey goes on a big run in this matchup here, even hits a springboard 450. That's kind of his highest high spot of the match, but he does end up losing handily to Kushida and the hoverboard lock. And then after the match, though, you've got Kyle O'Reilly confronting Kushida in the ring and challenging him for a match next week. And Kushida accepts. So Kyle's already picked his opponent for next week. That should be a really good match if everything ends clean for this one, because they do have a history. Not sure they'll acknowledge it on air here, but there is a history and there is a precedent to them wrestling very well against each other. Frankie Monet is backstage, and she declares that next week will be the encore presentation of her world premiere, which basically means she's wrestling another match next week. She leaves the interview section and then goes to see Jessica Maya and Aaliyah elsewhere, and she tells them, you guys on your match on Sunday in the pre-show, you were on the verge of winning, but then Robert Stone got involved. And as soon as she says that, Robert Stone himself comes out the door, and then she totally changes her tune, and she's totally two-faced and says, oh, they should have listened to you more. You're great, Robert Stone. And then she leaves. So that's very interesting that she does a kind of pivot like that. Are we kind of maybe seeing her planting the seeds of division between Kamea and Aaliyah and Robert Stone? Or maybe she's going to try to usurp his managerial skills for them. Who really knows? But interesting little point there. Then we get a promo from Mercedes Martinez, who's watching back the footage of her getting wrecked by Mei Ying on Sunday after her match with Xia Li. She cuts a promo on all three members of Tian Sha, Xia, Boa, and Mei Ying, and she wraps it up by saying that when next time she sees Mei Ying, she won't have a chance to get out of her chair. Up next, it's time for LA Knight's $1 Million Championship coronation ceremony. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, welcomes LA and his catch-up red jacket to the ring, and LA seems very gracious about this, very humble, talks about how DiBiase was a childhood hero of his and such a fixture in his life as he was a wrestling fan at a young age and whatnot, how he had the $1 Million Man action figure, and he and his friends always fought over who got to play the $1 Million Man when they were playing wrestling as kids. So he has DiBiase declare him the new champion, and there's some "We Want Cameron" chants and "To the Moon" chants as this thing is going on. Then LA says now that he has everything he wants, it's time to get rid of the things he doesn't need. And bam! Turns around and punches Ted DiBiase in the mush. DiBiase takes a bump. Holy shit, didn't see that coming. And then he beats down Ted some more. Cameron Grimes runs in to make the save, and he helps DiBiase back up and everything. This was a pretty good segment here. It really shows, it really hammers home just how much of a bastard LA is in this role as a $1 Million champion, even going so far as to reject the $1 Million Man himself. That's how much he thinks of himself as the new $1 Million champion and everything. And Cameron gets a bit of a boost as well. Seemingly we're continuing the storyline here. I'm not sure where DiBiase is going to fit in this. Maybe that's kind of the way they write him off, and it's just down to Cameron and LA going forward, or maybe Ted DiBiase will contribute more. Who knows? I think, like I mentioned in my review of TakeOver, I think the way they've been using DiBiase here has been pretty well done since he started physically appearing on NXT, and just to see him take it had to be his first bump in like at least 20 years, right? Very impressive to see him do that. Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai interviewed backstage. They say they want the tag team championships again, and tonight's their first step toward achieving that goal. They get into it for a moment briefly with Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart backstage, kind of a repeat of what we saw on Sunday. And then we see Raquel and Dakota take on Kacy Catanzaro and Kayden Carter. Now, I was looking at this match thinking it was going to be a squash, but far from it, because I think Team K looked very impressive here in their inevitable defeat. There was a point early on where Kayden's got a really cool octopus submission against the standing Raquel Gonzalez. And to see the two of them looking so small and diminutive compared to the champion, and seeing them one after the others go bam, 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 attacking her, was really fun to see. And yeah, they had some big runs by Team K here. A really cool neckbreaker 450 combo as well. Never seen that done. But Raquel using her strength to level the playing field. GTK by Dakota to Kacy to win. This is a very good match. Everrise backstage has a bone to pick with Hit Row after what happened in their pre-show on Sunday, where Hit Row destroyed their little toy house as part of their set, and they announced they've rebuilt the house, and the camera pans to reveal looking like total shit, which is absolutely hilarious. And they basically say they want a shot at Hit Row at some point. They ring the doorbell on the top of the house, and you hear the doorbell sound. I think there was a big missed opportunity for them to just touch it with a doorbell, and all of a sudden the house just collapses again on impact like a cartoon. That would have been even better. But anyway, after that we see Io Shirai. We saw her return last week to TV. She's in the ring. She says she's back and she wants, but before she can really finish what she's saying, Candice LeRae interrupts. And now she says, lots changed since last time we faced each other. And she's going to confront Io in the ring. But then Indy Hartwell jumps Io from behind. 2-on-1 advantage until Zoe Stark makes the save, evens the odds. And then Io hits a double springboard drop kick onto the way. And Indy and Candice powder. And that's the end of that. So that seems to be the direction we're going here as a tag team match with these two. In the absence of legitimate women's tag teams right now at NXT, in spite of them making a tag team championship for the women's division, I guess the best thing you can do is just make teams from whole cloth, and that's kind of what they're doing here with Zoe and Io. A bit of a production botch here. We're going backstage to see William Regal and Samoa Joe leaving the office and going out the building, very similar to what we saw in the end of TakeOver. And Regal gets one word out, goes, Mackenzie, and then just fades over to see Ciampa and Thatcher walking down the hall getting ready for their match. Thatcher steals MSK's popcorn and leaves, okay. And then after the break, we try it again. Then we see Regal and Joe in the office again, and they're talking. Then Gargano and Austin Theory show up, and they're trying to be kiss asses, but Joe tells them to leave. Then Pete Dunne shows up, and he has to stare down with Joe. So many teases tonight with Joe and all these people he's interacting with. And speaking of teases, one thing that we saw a couple times on this show was kind of a cryptic vignette or video where you see a charging battery image throughout the night. A couple times you see this. So who could it possibly be? Place your bets. In your main event, a rare tornado tag team match here as Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher take on the grizzled young veterans. And this thing is just a brawl from the get-go, from beginning to end. And there's really no wasted time in this thing. There's no real slow points or breaks in this thing. It's just a chaotic brawl from bell to bell, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Just hard-hitting madness throughout this thing. Way too much chaos to really call in this thing. Ciampa in the end taking out Zach Gibson with an air raid crash on the announce table. Then you've got the fairy tale ending on Drake and a double submission for Drake to tap out, and that's how that match ends. But yeah, really fun, excellent main event to close the show. But wait, we're not done yet seeing Samoa Joe and William Regal, because we cut to the outside of the building. They're there again, and they shake hands saying, job well done, good first night. And Regal just drives off, and we fade to black. And wow, that was so necessary after having to do the redo from earlier that we already saw. My grade for this week's NXT is an A-, and it pretty much hinges on the strength of Joe. Seeing Samoa Joe come back the way he did tonight in a role I think he'll be well suited for, in an environment where I think he'll be treated better and with more consistency than he was in the main roster, for example, I think is a great way to open the show. Just him coming out there after that emotional speech by Regal and everything. Great opener. Some great matches here, and especially one, the women's tag team match, which really took me by surprise with the quality and just what we saw in that thing. And of course, the main event was just really wild and a lot of fun. LA Knight punching out Ted DiBiase was a bit of a shocking moment, just a cool kind of coronation thing, again establishing his just utter heelness here. Not too much to complain about this week, we saw some continuing stories from what we saw at TakeOver and building some interesting new ones, some interesting teases along the way. So yeah, nothing really to complain about with this match, bar one match. Besides that though, a pretty good show. But what did you all think of NXT this week, folks? Let me know in the comments section below. And a reminder, we are halfway through the month of June right now, which means you still have a couple weeks weeks left to score yourself a limited edition Like What You Like, Don't Be a Dick Pride t-shirt over at prowrestlingtees.com/wrestlingwithregret, being sold only for the month of June in honor of Pride, and the proceeds of which will go directly to the Trevor Project. This shirt's been selling very well so far this month, but we're not done yet. You still have some time to get one of your own and support a great cause while you do it. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.